Salem YMCA. Ladies and gentlemen, Seth Moulton. Thank you very much. It's an honor to be here tonight, and thank you to Go Out Loud and Boston Spirit for hosting this wonderful and important event. We're all here tonight because we share some fundamental values. We all believe in equality, and we believe that equality in marriage should be the right of the land in all 50 states in this country. We're here because we all believe that the U.S. Congress should finally pass PENDA to end discrimination in the workplace. And we're here tonight because we believe that youth homelessness is a problem, and Congress needs to address it, and that all kids should be safe in school, no matter what their background or what their orientation. And we're here tonight because we believe that if you have a spouse, no matter whatever your orientation is, that if your spouse is from a foreign country, you should be able to sponsor him or her here in the States. And we have made a lot of progress, and I'm very proud that we live in a time when equality is sweeping across the land. Think about it. In 2008, there were two Democratic candidates for president, both of whom were publicly opposed to marriage equality. And now, one of those candidates is in the White House, and both he and the vice president are on the record in favor of equality in marriage. That's a lot of progress. And you know what? The progress is due to people like you, to people in the community, not just to politicians in Washington who change their views, but to people in this community who are fighting every day to make equality a law of the land. So, it's nice that we're all here and you're listening to these candidates, but we should also thank you for the work that you do every single day. For a long time, I have said that equality is a civil rights fight of our generation. And I started saying that a long time before I started running for Congress. But for me, it's not just about the principle. It's also very personal. I grew up in a pretty typical American household. 3 kids, a loving mother and father. We all walked to school, not far from here. My mom and dad still work every day, pay the bills. My sister became a public school teacher. She teaches high school history. My brother is a reporter for a local newspaper. There's no one that I've spent more time with in my 35 years than my brothers. We did a lot of the same things growing up, shared the same values, the same activities. My brother is a great guy. You'll never meet anyone nicer in this town or in this country. My brother is a great reporter. He's incredibly dedicated to his work. And my brother is gay. And I think it's wrong that my brother and I, even in 2014, still don't share the same rights. I joined the military after college. It was before the war. I was opposed to the Iraq War when it happened, but I was very proud to serve. But if my brother had wanted to join the military, it would have been under Don't Ask, Don't Tell, and it would have been a very different decision for him. If I want to get married, I can get married in any state in this land. But my brother's not allowed to do that. We're so similar, and yet we have different rights. And my brother has to be concerned about coming out in the workplace because he's not protected under the law. So despite all the progress that we've had in the past few years, we're not equal. And that's wrong. And there's still a lot of work to do.
Thank you. And we will start with question number 1, and who better to ask than a Marine? How will you ensure safety of LGBTQ youth and LGBT people in the community from hate crimes in public places and hate crimes through discrimination?
Well, I've actually spent a lot of time, 5 years, in an organization that was opposed to equality for the Department of Defense policy. So I know what it's like to be in the minority and to fight for equal rights. There are Marines that I served with who were gay. And there weren't a lot of people who were willing to talk to us, but I always did. When Don't Ask, Don't Tell was the law of the land, most people just accepted it the way it was. But in 2010, there were 189,000 Marines in the United States Marine Corps, 189,000. There were only 25 of us who wrote about the end of Don't Ask, Don't Tell and had it published. So I understand what it's like to fight for rights in an organization, in a society, in a place that the majority is opposed to them. And that spirit of leadership is exactly what I will bring to the United States Congress as your representative.
And just to do a quick time check, we've got about 4.5 minutes left. 2 questions and 4.5 minutes, so I'll read fast. I've asked all the candidates so far, and I will ask you as well, what measures you would take as U.S. Congressman with regard to marriages and civil unions being more recognizable outside of Massachusetts and states where they're legal, with regards to specific rights, Social Security, power of attorney, health care, and so on.
Well, you know, the problem in Congress today is that legislation is there. The problem is not that we haven't authored the legislation. The problem is that we haven't gotten it passed. We need to get it passed. And it matters. It matters that we achieve equality. I'll tell you a quick story about one of the Marines I served with who inspired me to be one of those 25 who stood up for equal rights in an organization that was opposed to it. My friend Joe served 2 tours in Iraq. We both disagreed in the war. With the war, we both served proudly. And then we got out. And when Joe got out, he came out. And then, a year later, when the surge started in Iraq, we were both called back to active duty. We both received letters in the mail that said, you have to go back on active service. The difference was, Joe only had to say one thing. Call the Marine Corps and just use 2 words, I'm gay, and he wouldn't have had to go. And he thought long and hard about this, and we talked about it. But at the end of the day, Joe didn't do that because he wanted to serve his country again. And he didn't want anyone to go in his place. Now, I think it took a lot of courage for people to stand up to Don't Ask, Don't Tell and refuse to join the military when that was the policy. But I also think it took a lot of courage for someone like Joe to stand up to the policy and yet still serve. And it was inspiration to me. It was inspiration to me when I faced going back to the war for a 4th tour. And that inspiration that Joe showed is what inspired me to be a leader, even inside the military, for the end of that policy.
Very good. 2 minutes to go. Another appropriate question considering your current work with the local YMCA. You mentioned in one of the other questions that statistics with regard to LGBTQ youth homelessness are staggering. What steps would you take to address that issue collectively?
You know, this is one of those issues that people just don't talk about. I've talked a lot about what an inspiration Joe was to me. When I was asked a couple years later, after this occurred, to tell a story to a bunch of young college graduates who wanted to join the Marine Corps about courage, I just come back from the war and I've seen hundreds of stories of courage. Young Americans doing incredible things to ensure our safety and freedom. But the story I chose was Joe's. What I didn't know that night, he said in that small room, with about 15 young Marines, one of them was gay. And 2 years after that night, I got a letter, I got an email, one of the most moving and important emails I think I've ever received. He told me that he hadn't come out. He was sitting at that table that night, literally trembling as I told this story. It was the first time that he had ever heard a Marine talk about courage in terms of who really he was as a person. Youth homelessness is one of those things that a lot of people don't like to acknowledge, that a lot of people don't like to talk about. But we have to talk about it, and we have to take care of it. Now, I want to say for just a minute what kind of congressman you can expect me to be. Because there's a lot of talk in Washington. And there are a lot of people who take credit for the work that you are doing. I am not going to go to Congress and be a congressman who just talks about bills that I co-sponsor. Co-sponsoring a bill is easy. It's like liking a post on Facebook. It's a nice gesture. You're on the right side of the issue, but it doesn't do anything to get the bill passed. Sponsoring a bill, now at least if you sponsor a bill, you're taking some leadership, you're pushing forward some creative new ideas. But if the bill doesn't get passed, then it doesn't make any difference for all of us. We need leaders who are going to go to Washington and roll up their sleeves, and no matter who is in power in Congress, no matter whether the majority is with us or the majority is against us, will work to get legislation passed. That is the kind of congressman I want to be. We literally today have the least effective Congress in our nation's history. Never have we had a Congress that has passed fewer bills than the Congress we have today. It's time for a new generation of leadership. You don't change Congress by sending the same people back. I believe we need a new generation of leadership in Washington. I believe it should be our generation. And I can promise you that as a leader from our generation, I will always fight for equality, and I will always fight for you. I will fight for my